Hello, this is Katie Walker, and I'm going to talk to you about how you can communicate with students using Blackboard and VoiceThread. I'm an instructional designer in academic innovations and e-learning. And today, these are our objectives. Basically, we're going to talk about some different tools that are available inside UAA's Blackboard and the importance of taking the time to consider engaging discussion prompts for your students. And we'll look at actually how to add discussions in VoiceThread to your Blackboard course. We recommend that you keep it simple, focusing on communication rather than grading students on APA format or something like that in a discussion tool. Think about all kinds of class activities that might serve to help students practice and really understand the content, sharing their ideas, sharing their work. We do have some great ideas for you if you want to go to this bit.ly link for better Blackboard discussion forums. Our goals for students, we want them to engage with the material, we want them to use these tools to interact with each other, and to think more deeply. We're going to focus on the discussion tool in Blackboard, but the blogs, journals, wikis tools might also be something you want to consider. They aren't as geared towards back and forth discussion with multiple replies, ongoing discussion, like Discussion Board and VoiceThread are, but they do have a great purpose, so consider all of these possible tools. If you want to use the group tool inside Blackboard, you can put your students into groups where they can choose to use any of these tools in a smaller group rather than the whole class. UAA has paid for VoiceThread. We have it integrated into Blackboard, and it is also a discussion board. It looks quite different. And students can use their voice rather than text to contribute. Collaborate and Zoom are synchronous tools. In this session, we're focusing on asynchronous tools. Students can participate in these tools, discussion and VoiceThread, really at any time. For knowledge checks, group collaboration, longer projects, there are some other tools you might consider. Discussions in VoiceThread are particularly useful for FAQs or common questions. In fact, we've been asked at UAA to create a discussion board in our Blackboard courses titled Ask, which would be a great place for students to pose questions where everybody can see the answers. It would be more efficient than having them email you. A student lounge could be created that is not monitored by the faculty member for students to talk amongst themselves, but primarily you're going to use these tools for sharing perspectives, ideas, for students to do analysis or share examples. This is a quick look at the discussion forum. At a glance, you can see this particular discussion forum has points attached to it. It has a grade discussion forum feature. That makes it easier for grading. It's very text-based. You can see that there's 3 posts, but I have to click on this thread to be able to see the replies. I want you to look at the different views, search and display, the ways you can collect, because there's probably a way you would prefer to read this discussion forum. It's best to read it, follow it all through before trying to grade it. In comparison, this is what a VoiceThread looks like. You can see at the top that this VoiceThread consists of 9 different slides. These arrows at the bottom right is how you would move through the different slides, and on each slide, students can add comments and they will appear over here on the left. There are 5 different ways to add comments in VoiceThread, with the primary way being the microphone. Now I'm inside UAA's Blackboard in a demonstration course, and I'm going to show you how you can add a discussion board and how you can add a VoiceThread. So first thing is you can add them in a variety of different places wherever you want the students to find them. So if you have your course organized into weekly folders, you can go inside that weekly folder to create either of these types of discussions. Because the discussion board is part of Blackboard, it is considered one of the tools. If you would like, you can use the plus button and add that tool using a tool link and choose discussion and add that directly to the menu to make it easier for students to find. Otherwise, they'd have to come down here under tools to get to it or go through one of your content folders. You don't have to name it discussion board. So if you're exclusively using your discussion board for reading reflections or something like that, you can feel free to name it that. And if you make it available to users, it would appear over here on the left. I'm going to go inside my content folder because that's where I want to add both a discussion board and a VoiceThread to show you how they work. To add a discussion, I go to Tools, Discussion Board. There are existing forums on my discussion board, and I can create a new forum where I'm going to put my very exciting topic in, and I'm going to put some detailed instructions for my expectations for students' participation in this discussion forum. Because I'm going to be actually having this added both inside my content folder and on the discussion board, it's helpful if I copy the instructions for the next step. I don't recommend making this disappear. This is intended to be kind of an ongoing discussion, so usually we leave those available for students to go back to and continue the discussion at any time. There are a variety of ways to use a discussion forum. You don't have to have everybody post their thread and then respond to one another's. You can have them actually be required to post their first thread before they can even see anybody else's. It doesn't even have to be used for threaded discussion. A discussion board can simply be used for students to share projects that they're working on or for peer feedback, a wide variety of uses. Both tools will give you the option of whether you want it to create a grade center column for you in the gradebook. And so if you choose to do that, you need to put the points in and a due date. You may choose to add a rubric, makes grading a little bit easier and gives students the expectations that you're looking for. You want to carefully look through all of these settings to see which ones you want for this particular activity. I can't allow anonymous posts if I've given it points because that aligns with the grade center. After you've looked at all the options, go ahead and click Submit. And then there's a second step because the second step will add it to the discussion board. So here's my new one. I'm going to click Next. And this is where I paste in the instructions the second time. I prefer to do it that way so that my instructions appear both inside my Week 10 folder, and then they would also appear if a student got to this tool by going to my discussion item or by going through Tools, my new topic, then they see the instructions there. And to start a new forum, to add a thread, students will have to click Create Thread. Sometimes I like to create a thread for them just so there's something there when they first get in. So they would create a thread. There's a lot of different things that they can add to this thread. So they can attach files, they can add pictures, they can use some of the math editing features, they can add YouTube videos and other things like that. So they will put in a subject. I recommend that you guide them to put in a subject that actually is applicable to the content of what they're going to be posting, rather than something that includes their name or something that includes the assignment name. So I'm going to go ahead and type something in here as an example, and I could add a photo or whatever. Right now I'm going to not add anything, and I'm going to hit Submit. And now you can see that I have posted there. So again, this is going to look the same whether I'm on the discussion board here or whether I go to course content inside my Week 10 folder and click on it here. It's going to be the same. They're connected. Now I'm going to go back to my course content and I'm going to show you how to add a VoiceThread. In Week 10, instead of going to Tools for VoiceThread, I go to Build Content. There's 3 choices for a VoiceThread assignment. I'm going to choose VoiceThread UAA. Once again, in a very similar format, I have to fill in all of my things. My topic, my instructions. And in this case, there's also 2 steps. I first choose, do I want it graded? Put in my points, my due date. And then I have a second step, just like when I'm creating a discussion board. But this time I actually get all the way outside of it and have to click back on it. So I haven't created the voice, I haven't associated an actual VoiceThread with it. So prior to doing this, maybe I've already created a PowerPoint presentation. That's a very common way of creating a VoiceThread, is to first create a PowerPoint presentation. Because I've given this VoiceThread points, I have this button called Assignment Builder. If I didn't, I would not see this button. I'm going to go ahead and click on this button, and it's going to ask me, what do I want the students to do? Do I want the students to each create a VoiceThread, or do I want them to comment on my VoiceThread, or just watch a VoiceThread? Most common scenario is to have students submit a comment or more on your VoiceThread. As I said, I typically use a PowerPoint presentation to create a VoiceThread initially. If I didn't already create one, I could create a new VoiceThread here by clicking Add Media and adding a PowerPoint. I prefer to convert my PowerPoint to PDF before I add it here in VoiceThread so that it maintains all of my fonts and pictures and layout the way I want it. I can add videos and all kinds of things in my VoiceThread. I'm going to go back and show you an existing one. I'm going to just pick this one as a random example. So I really only have to make one decision, is that how many comments am I expecting my students to make? Most VoiceThreads, as I said, are multiple slides, so maybe 10 to 20 different slides, and I can choose to have them comment on every single slide, or I can just say they have to make 5 comments somewhere throughout this VoiceThread. I can add additional expectations or instructions here. I don't have to do anything. This box is already checked to share the VoiceThread with the class, so I can click Create Assignment. I got into Blackboard's student preview mode to show you what these both look like from the student perspective. When I go to course content and go to my week 10 folder, first is my discussion board. I have a post on there already, so I, as a student, I could read this person's post. I could reply to it. Again, I have lots of options for how to reply to it. In this case, I'm just going to type and hit submit. And now you can see I've replied to the original student. And I go back to the main topic. I can add my own thread here. So my reply is why there's 2 here now. I could add my own thread to this forum as well. You can set it so that students can subscribe to a forum and get notifications when people have replied to their posts. I'm going to go back to my course content and demonstrate also in the week 10 folder what the VoiceThread is going to look like to the student. When you click on topic, it has to launch the LTI to be able to see VoiceThread. It takes a minute, and then students will be able to add comments to the VoiceThread. So this is the student view. The student could listen to all of the comments that were already there, use the arrow on the bottom right to move through all the different slides and go through all the different comments. And then when they're ready, they can use this plus button to add their own comments. The microphone is the recommended way for people to add comments, and it's recording me right now. While I'm recording, I can also even grab a pen and write on the board. When I stop recording, I have the opportunity to listen to what I've said, to add comments, and then I can determine if it's what I wanted to say or not, and if not, I can click cancel, and if so, I can click save, and it adds my comment on the left. When you're looking at a VoiceThread, you can turn the CC button on, and you'll notice that comments are automatically captioned. And this is a feature that we've recently started paying for. And we can download comments, and we can actually edit captions as well. I can see that this one is not accurate, so I can go through and edit that as well. Also for accessibility, if you do have a slide that includes a screenshot like this one, you will want to make sure to add an audio comment in which you describe that image for accessibility purposes. You can direct reply to people, and I'll show you a couple of examples. Here's an example where a student asked a question, and you can see underneath I have a little lock here. This is a private response that I made to this student.
Hi, Katie.
And to answer him, I clicked this padlock. That's a private reply that no one else will see, or I could have done a reply that everybody could see. And it always will put your new reply right underneath the one it goes with to make it make a little bit more sense. I mentioned before that you can add video to a VoiceThread. You can actually add comments at different places throughout a video as well. Once a student is finished adding all of their comments that are required, then they can hit Submit Assignment and return to the course. They don't have to submit the assignment until they're finished. They could go back and forth. They're encouraged to go back multiple times and see what new comments have been added to the VoiceThread. From the faculty perspective, when you click on the discussion board, you can read through. I recommend highly that you look through the conversation in context, in order, before you go in to grade the discussion. When you grade the discussion, you can click on one of the grade buttons for a particular student, and then in this case the student has not participated, but you would see all of the contributions this one student made, whether they were initial posts or replies. You'd see them all pulled out, filtered out, so that you could go ahead and give a score, and you could give private feedback to students that would not show up on the discussion board and submit their grade for the discussion forum. Grading the VoiceThread is a little bit different. When I click as a faculty member on the VoiceThread and launch the VoiceThread LTI, it takes just a moment, and then I will be able to participate in the VoiceThread, listen to all of the comments, and then also add grades. So this is the name of the VoiceThread that I have created. So if I click on it, it will open just like we saw a moment ago, and I could add my own comments. I could go through all the slides and listen to all the comments, which I recommend you do before grading. Because when you grade, just like with the discussion board, it filters out all of each individual student's contributions to that, which is taken out of context. So once you are ready to grade, you do grade a VoiceThread in a slightly different way. You have to put a percentage in. So even though I may have given this 4 points or 5 points, what I have to enter here is going to be 90% or 100% or 85%. And Blackboard will convert that to the correct number of points in my Grade Center column. Students that have not clicked that Submit button but have participated will show up listed down here. If for some reason a student does not hit the Submit button, that doesn't really mean you can't grade them. You might remind them to submit it, and if they still don't, you've seen all of their comments here, and you can just manually go to the Grade Center and type in their points. In that case, if you're doing it directly, you would not use a percent, you would type in their points. There's a few things about VoiceThread that I wanted to add here. When you're looking at VoiceThread, when you're creating your VoiceThread by adding media and adding your comments, you don't have to use this share button, because when you do it in Blackboard, it's automatically shared with the class. However, if you wanted to share a VoiceThread publicly, you can use this share button to get a link to your VoiceThread and share it outside of Blackboard. Another comment I want to make is that for accessibility purposes, you should go to each slide and add a title for the slide. And if you have complex images, you should make sure to add a comment in which you describe that complex image. Under the options in VoiceThread, you might want to pay attention to some of these settings. By default, you can allow your students to add slides to a VoiceThread. So that works pretty well. So not only can they just comment on your slides, they can add additional slides to the end of your presentation. So take a look at some of these settings. There might be some other things that you would like to change when you're using VoiceThread in your class. In closing, I just want to remind you about usability and accessibility whenever using technology tools with students. Both the Blackboard discussion board and VoiceThread have keyboard shortcuts that can be used and mobile apps for the students to use. They probably would be better off using a computer rather than the mobile app, but it's still nice to have another option if necessary. When using the discussion board, it's best to type text directly into it rather than attaching files. Whether you're putting images in a discussion or a VoiceThread, they should be described either with alt text or with a descriptive caption or with an audio description by voice. When you're using VoiceThread, you could consider also providing an accessible PowerPoint file to leave the students more options to access the information. And as I mentioned, we do have automated machine captioning in VoiceThread. Originally, we had purchased it only through May, but we are working on extending that beyond May at this point. That's a huge accessibility feature for using VoiceThread, and I've already talked about adding a title. In summary, these are great asynchronous tools that we have in UAA's Blackboard for interaction. I hope that you take the time to determine which tool works best for your particular course and your students, and reach out if you need any additional help. Consider the accessibility features that I mentioned as well. Best wishes.